Hi everyone, we are gonna keep working on our Hello World file here. So we've got a image that we're gonna copy in and we're gonna put below this Hello World, and we're gonna basically take this image and turn it into a vector and do a carving and demonstrate what that looks like. And so first step is for us to go find the file. So we're gonna take this picture of these waffles and we're going to copy this picture in. So there's the JPEG we're going to be working off of. And so what we're going to do is copy this over here. It takes it a second sometimes to load. That was actually pretty fast. And then we're going to size it. And we're just kind of going to eyeball this one, but maybe a little bigger. And as always, we're going to make sure it's centered in the middle here. And so centered, and let's see what it looks like. It's a little too high for. I think it would look better right there. Okay, and then we'll just double check that it is still centered. And we're going to use the tool for converting a image into a vector. So this is the trace bitmap tool. So we'll make sure our picture is selected, and then we'll open this tool up, and so you'll see it's kept it selected. And now we need to figure out kind of what is the threshold between, this is a black and white photo, so really we're just differentiating between whether it's black, whether it's white. If you have color, you can actually kind of isolate individual colors. If you wanted to carve it in either different sequence, if you wanted to carve it, pour some epoxy in that color and then carve the next color, so on and so forth. Since this is black and white and we're just going to be carving it with a V-bit, we're going to go ahead and we can adjust what you see. It's kind of removing some of those lines. It's like the effectively the quality of carve that we want. So we're trying to find a nice balance where the lines look nice and crisp. We can zoom in a little bit just to see how crisp these lines get. So probably about right there is where I'll start. And then we can set the corner fit. Adjusting these settings will just determine how tight the vector fits to the defining lines. And then we can also adjust the noise filter, which I typically keep it at the default settings. And we can set default corner fit as well. And so this is effectively the default. And then we're going to tell it to group all the vectors when it's done so that they're all together. And so when we preview this, it's going to take and draw those little bit darker lines around it. And we can come in later and clean up the ones that are either too small or just aren't going to look good once you carve it. And so as we apply that cut and exit the tool, you'll see let me zoom out. Until we get this finished, I'll go ahead and move this out. You'll see that we're left with the vectors that were drawn on those crisp lines in between. And just looking at this, I know there's a few spots that it's not going to carve very well. And so that's things like these. And so we can ungroup these back onto either the group layer or original layer. Since we're only working with one layer in this example, it doesn't matter which option we choose. And I know that one's going to that's going to create too narrow of a cut. This is going to be a little too narrow. It's not going to look good with the 60-degree V-bit. Kind of eyeballing the rest of these. They're probably, depending on how deep we go, they're probably going to be just fine. And we'll showcase kind of the outline of these wonderfully looking waffles right now. And then sometimes we'll just want to do a quick vector check. So validate the vectors, and since we're in VCarving mode, we'll select that, and it will basically go through and we'll see if there are any. Sometimes a bitmap will leave little tiny dots that you need to go in and make sure are deleted because they will mess with the vector calculations. And so we've now got this stack of waffles added in here, and let's go ahead and we can select these waffles and go create a VCarving bit or VCarve toolpath. And we'll keep we're actually going to reduce the depth on this a little bit just because we don't want it to go as deep. And so let's just go to 1/10 of an inch. And keeping all the same settings we talked about last time, using that same 60-degree V-bit, and then no clearance tools, although we could potentially use a clearance tool here. What we're going to see is 1560, cut 2, and we'll just call this Waffles. And so we'll go ahead and calculate this. Sometimes it'll calculate opposite of what we want. So let's just see what it has selected here to carve out. And then what we can do is we can run a animation. You notice since the last video I've set it back to material color. Realized last time I'd set it on kind of a solid color. But this one, we have material color, we've got kind of the waffle vector being drawn, and let's go ahead and preview this toolpath. Make sure we've got it selected. And it rendered pretty fast. It might be a little too deep, just because these potentially will get knocked off as it starts carving. But you see we've got the lump of butter sitting up top. We could epoxy infill this and then sand it smooth, or leave it as a carve. But I'm going to go ahead and adjust this. And I'm going to take it to an even shallower cut. And we'll just take it to 0.05 inches. And then we'll recalculate this. And so it's done the recalculation, but it hasn't gotten rid of our preview. And so we will reset the preview, which erases everything. And then we're actually going to tell it, let's go ahead and recalculate both just to be safe. So using this recalculate all button. All toolpaths successfully recalculated. That's good news. And we'll go back to this preview. And this time we're going to do preview all toolpaths. So it'll carve that hello world in the top. It'll carve it's a little bit shallower, so it gives a little bit more stability as you think about these pieces that are sticking up. And then we can go ahead and, looking at it, that looks pretty good. And so we can take and close this, and we're really, we can save both. Since they're both using the same bit, we can actually combine them into a single file. And so we're going to use this combine visible toolpaths to multiple files, and then group where possible. You see right now it's kind of going to save cut 1, cut 2. Since we're going to do group where possible, it'll now save it as one cut. And so we'll just do a little one cut A, hello world, and waffles. And since they're using the same bit, it will now, when we tell it to complete the carve, we're going to slow this down just so you guys can see kind of what this looks like. So let's reset the preview, and we'll preview all toolpaths. Let's slow this down even further. We can speed it up in a sec. See, this effectively will show us the order that it's going to carve. Speed it up a little bit. And so you can kind of see as it's carving this out, it's going to go and cut all these various parts and pieces, and then it's going to infill some of those spots that it's filling out right now. Those are ones that a 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch roughing pass might help clean out as well. But it's not actually going to be that much faster because you have bit switch as well as a few other things that you'll be doing. And so that effectively gives us what it'll look like. And let's just check the time, just curious. So it's going to take 4 minutes for the hello world and then 21 minutes for this. Again, we had slowed that down, so it'll be a little faster. Just because I like to carve in harder woods that typically run at a slower inches per minute. And that's effectively, our hello world, hello waffles. Maybe we should rename that. And it's not that difficult for us to go in and rename that. So we can go back to the 2D view, and let's adjust the text. Hello, Waffles. Just kind of eyeballing the settings. Those all look good. Hello, Waffles. Make sure it's centered. Should be, but just to be safe. Oh, it was off a little bit. Hello, Waffles. Probably because it's a little bit longer, so it filled out more of that curve. And this is where our recalculate will come in handy, because we made changes to lots of stuff. Positioning and text and all that stuff, and it recalculated all of it. And then if we go in here to, you notice it still says Hello World. You can kind of see the overlay of the new toolpath that's going to be there. You can remove that and add it back in. So we're going to reset the preview, and then we're going to preview all toolpaths. And you can see it's basically carving all that. It's swapped out that text for the new letters. I'm just kind of letting this run and speed it up a little bit. And then we've got Hello Waffles. And then, as always, we recalculated, we've previewed, now we need to resave. That's something I sometimes forget, and so I'll go and carve, and it still says Hello World, and it doesn't do the waffles, because I didn't actually save the toolpath. And so we will combine where possible, we'll save the toolpath, and we're just going to write over the top of this one. And so hello, actually we can just rename this Hello Waffles. Hello Waffles, and we'll just update this just so we keep those old versions that we can load into the CNC. There it goes. Just took it a second. And then we can go hop in and see that, hey, there's our file. We got Hello Waffles. Oh, it added some of that duplicate text back in. Probably because we're grouping. And so this effectively is our G-code file to send over. Is cut 1, cut 2, both toolpaths are used in here. And then it's using that 60-degree bit for both. And it starts cut 1, later it'll start cut 2. So it gives you a good understanding of what the G-code is going to do there. And so those effectively both look good. So we'll go ahead and send that over and get it cutting if we wanted to. I'm just doing these as demos, but thanks for watching, and keep more of these coming.